Lucas, a man caught between the grief of losing his wife and the crushing weight of financial burdens, made a decision both cruel and desperate. He abandoned his late wife's three daughters at a remote border crossing. The triplet girls, Lena, Yanni, and Issa, stood in the swirling dust, their innocent, trusting eyes filled with hope of seeing their mother. Lucas, hiding the storm inside his heart, lied to them that she was waiting just beyond the checkpoint, and he simply needed to go back for some documents. But the moment his truck disappeared behind the curtain of dust, guilt and regret surged through him like a flood. Returning to the toy store, once a shared dream with his late wife, Lucas began to unravel. It wasn't just the debts crushing him, it was the betrayal he had inflicted on three defenseless children. It seemed like the end, and yet fate cracked open a different door. A family of strangers, the Remingtons, happened to find the three girls and brought them to safety. But they didn't just save the children. They offered Lucas something more, a second journey, a chance to make amends, to heal, and to rebuild himself. But trust once broken, could it ever truly be rebuilt? This story is not only about redemption, it is a whisper of fate about forgiveness, about kinship, and about the lost fragments of family that we think are gone forever, only to find them again when we least expect it. The Remington family didn't just open their arms to three lost children. They brought Lucas an unexpected offer, a chance to start over. Gareth Remington, a successful businessman quietly battling late-stage cancer, had seen something familiar in the faces of the three girls. His mother, Constanza, had once been abandoned at that very same border crossing decades ago. That deep-rooted empathy stirred something in them, a desire to help Lucas. Not just so he could make amends, but to preserve the most beautiful parts of the woman he had lost. The Remingtons proposed to invest in the toy store, transforming Lucas's late wife's dream into a lasting legacy. In return, Lucas had to undergo therapy to learn how to become a father again. Not with words, but with actions. Under supervision, he was allowed to visit the girls each week, slowly rebuilding the bridge he had burned. Their first reunion was not filled with smiles or innocent eyes. It was filled with pain, anger, and distrust. "Why did you leave us?" Issa asked, her voice trembling but piercing, like a knife to the heart. Lucas didn't defend himself. He admitted it. He was afraid. He was weak, and he was wrong. There were no hugs, no teary embraces. But there was a flicker of hope, a lingering glance, a hesitant nod. And for Lucas, that was enough to know. The journey back into their hearts had just begun. Between hands that once let go forever, a fragile thread was slowly being rewoven. With love, with time, and with an unshakable resolve to never lose them again. As Lucas gradually stabilized in his therapy and was granted more frequent visits with the girls, long-buried secrets began to surface. During a scheduled meeting with the Remington family at the police station to finalize the guardianship papers, a shocking revelation came to light. Lena, Johnny, and Issa were not just three children the Remingtons happened to rescue. They were family. DNA results confirmed it. The girls' biological father, Roger, who had died in an accident before Lucas entered Jennifer's life, was the long-lost younger brother of Monica Remington and son of Constanza. Over 40 years ago, in the chaos of a border crossing, Monica and Roger had been separated. Monica was rescued, but her little brother had been taken in by another family, cut off from his roots, never knowing where he truly came from. Lucas was stunned. The three children he had once believed himself merely a stepfather to were in fact at the center of a complex web of fate, one that intertwined the past and present in ways he never imagined. Now, he wasn't just a father figure, he was the only living thread connecting them to their mother, Jennifer, and to a father they never had the chance to know. Monica and Constanza had no intention of taking the girls away. They didn't want to replace a family, they wanted to expand it. But Lucas knew blood ties had a way of shifting everything. And within that intricate current, he was forced to ask himself a painful question. Was he truly worthy of being a permanent part of these girls' lives, even if not by blood, but by love, by effort, by shared pain? His journey wasn't over. It had just entered a new chapter, one that would demand not only love, but courage and compassion strong enough to carry the weight of both the past and the future. A few weeks after the revelation about the girl's bloodline, Lucas received a brief message from Constanza. "We need to talk. He's reached out." He was Adrian, the biological father of Monica and Roger, the man who had abandoned his two children at the border decades ago and vanished like he had never existed. Now, in the twilight of his life, he had suddenly resurfaced, expressing a desire to meet his grandchildren, Lena, Yanni, and Issa. Lucas was furious. How could a man who had turned his back on his own children dare to return and claim a place in the lives of three little girls? But Constanza, the one who had been wounded the most, quietly said, "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means release." The meeting was held in the warmth of her home. The girls, after several gentle conversations to help them understand, sat silently, watching the silver-haired man with a weathered face slowly approach. He didn't beg. He didn't justify. He simply said, "I was wrong, just as Uncle Lucas was once wrong. But he came back, and I didn't. Now, if there's still time, I want to do what's right." His admission fell like a hush over the room, not because it was emotional, but because, for the first time, Lucas realized he wasn't the only one who had ever failed. He turned to Lena, who was biting her lip, eyes fixed on the unfamiliar man. "You're like Uncle Lucas," she finally said, "but we'll need time to trust you." That answer wasn't forgiveness, but it was a door, gently cracked open, a door to a past full of pain and to a future still uncertain. Lucas understood then. He was no longer fighting to be accepted. He was fighting with others side by side to protect the home they were building, even if that home was made from broken bricks of the past. The grand opening of the toy store, Alena's dream, arrived on a warm spring day. After months of grief and healing, Lucas, together with the Remington family, had rebuilt a home, not just for themselves, but for the legacy of the woman he once loved. The store was adorned with hand-drawn artwork by the three girls, Lena, Johnny, and Issa, alongside handcrafted toys that bore the unmistakable imprint of Jennifer's creativity. Every detail told a story of sacrifice, forgiveness, and the yearning to mend what had been broken. Standing at the threshold, Lucas looked around silently, eyes filled with emotion. He thought back to the sleepless nights, the broken promises, the wounds of the past. But now, under the warm lights and the joyful chatter of children, it all felt like it finally made sense. He made a quiet promise to himself. He would never again lose the trust of the three girls. At the ribbon cutting, Constanza and Monica welcomed guests with gentle smiles. Lucas, now the new store director, personally guided visitors through the unique collection of toys, a fusion of Jennifer's handcrafted charm and meaningful storytelling. He shared pieces of his journey, his failures, and the fragile hopes that had since been planted in their place. In that moment, the eyes of Lena, Johnny, and Issa, now filled not with doubt, but with confidence and pride, turned toward Lucas. They ran into his arms as if to say, "You came back, and we're staying with you for the future we'll build together." Outside, guests marveled at the harmonious blend of past and present. Alena's dream was no longer just a tribute to what had been lost. It had become a symbol of new beginnings, a place where anyone, no matter how wounded, could find strength again, could find love again. As the golden sunset bathed the storefront in light, Lucas stood at the window, watching children and families laugh and explore. And he knew, deep in his soul, no matter how hard the road ahead might be, with love and forgiveness, anything could be healed. One quiet weekend afternoon, Lucas was cleaning the doll display corner, where the first three dolls he had ever made, modeled after Lena, Johnny, and Issa, still stood. As he dusted their tiny shoes and carefully adjusted their dresses, a gentle knock tapped against the store's glass door. He looked up to see Janine, the middle child, standing outside, clutching a drawing to her chest. "I drew this for you," she said softly as Lucas opened the door. The picture showed a large tree, with twisted roots and young branches sprouting in every direction. At its center stood three beaming little girls, and behind them, arms spread wide, was Lucas, shielding the base of the tree like a quiet guardian. Lucas stared at the drawing, his voice catching in his throat. May I keep it? Janine nodded, then whispered, Today is Mom's Memorial Day. I wanted her to see that you're still here. The words pierced his heart, but this time, instead of crumbling, Lucas managed a small, steady smile. Let's light candles for her tonight. All of us, your sisters and me. That evening, in the cozy back room of the shop, the girls placed 3 small candles beside a framed photo of Jennifer. Constanza brought cake. Monica made ginger tea, Jennifer's favorite. Lucas sat quietly, watching the flames dance across the girls' faces. There were no tears, only silence, full of love. I think Mom would be really happy, Issa whispered, her small hand slipping into Lucas's. Because you didn't leave this time. Lucas gently squeezed her hand, his heart trembling in his chest. He had once turned his back, once lost his way, but now he had found where he truly belonged, not in bloodlines, but in the hearts of those who had chosen to love him again. And this time he silently vowed he would never let anyone, not even himself, break that home apart again. 6 months after the 3 candles were lit in the little back room of the toy store, a single thin sheet of paper, more valuable than anything Lucas had ever dreamed of, was placed into his hands. The court had officially recognized Lucas Davis as the legal guardian of Lena, Johnny, and Issa. The judge's voice was calm and composed, but to Lucas, it sounded like a drum beat echoing through his chest. He was no longer the failed stepfather, no longer just the man who once walked away. Now he was their legal father, by choice, by effort, and by unconditional love. As the hearing ended, Constanza embraced him, her eyes glistening. Congratulations, she whispered. Jennifer was right to choose you. Monica nodded, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. Blood is a beginning, she said, but walking the journey together, that's the real answer. That evening, at Alena's dream, the girls had secretly prepared a small celebration. Alongside a handmade cake and ribbons was a card, written in careful, wobbly handwriting. Congratulations, Dad Lucas. Thank you for coming back. Lucas couldn't hold back his tears as he read each word. In that moment, every struggle, every sleepless night, every painful therapy session, it all became worth it. But joy, too, carried its own kind of weight. Gareth Remington, the man who had given their family a second chance, was now nearing the end of his battle with cancer. Before he passed, he entrusted Lucas with full ownership of the store and its assets, along with a simple parting wish. Keep the dream going, not just for Jennifer, but for the girls, and for yourself. Lucas understood. His journey wasn't ending here. It was a new beginning, for a father, a keeper of memories, and a man who had once lost his way, but had now found his path, steady beneath his feet. After being granted legal guardianship and taking full ownership of Alena's dream, Lucas thought he had reached the final chapter of his redemption story. But in truth, his greatest challenge was only just beginning. Before he passed away, Gareth had left behind an ambitious plan to expand Alena's dream into a nationwide chain of high-end toy stores. The new management team was ready, investors began pouring in, and the commercial pressure mounted with each passing day. You'll need to approve mass production, the project manager told him. Shorten crafting time. Move Jennifer's designs onto the assembly line. Lucas nodded, but unease simmered within him. That night he stepped into the workshop, a space still filled with the scent of fresh wood, paint, and memories. Every toy in that room wasn't just a product, it was a story. A breath of the woman he'd lost, a piece of childhood handcrafted for 3 little girls who had once known only dust and sorrow. Later that evening, as the girls did their homework, Lucas laid out Jennifer's old sketches on the table. Lena quietly came beside him, eyes following the soft curves of her mother's pen strokes. Mom used to say each toy held a tiny bit of magic, she whispered. Do you think a machine can make magic? That question haunted Lucas through the night. He knew expansion was inevitable if the store was to survive. But if it meant losing the soul of what made Alena's dream special, its handcrafted spirit, then the dream would become hollow. The next day, Lucas called a meeting. We will expand, he said, voice steady, but we'll preserve the spirit of the craft. Each location will have its own mini workshop where local artisans will be trained in Jennifer's techniques. We won't replicate products, we'll replicate magic. The room fell silent. Then Monica smiled. You haven't just preserved the legacy, Lucas, she said softly. You're growing it the right way. One peaceful morning, while Lucas was organizing old sketches in Jennifer's workroom, he stumbled upon a small wooden box, wedged behind a bookshelf, something he had never seen before. Inside was a bundle of aged letters, written in Jennifer's soft handwriting, and a linen-bound journal, worn with time. Lucas's heart raced as he gently opened the journal. On the first page in familiar cursive were the words, "For the 3 little girls who didn't have enough time to grow up with their mother." The following pages were filled with messages, snippets of journal entries, loving observations of the girls when they were small. How Lena used to furrow her brow while learning to write. How Johnny once dreamed of becoming an astronaut. How Issa feared the dark, but loved ghost stories. And at the very end was a long, unsent letter from Jennifer, addressed to Lucas. Lucas, if you're reading this, I may no longer be here. I don't know if you'll feel strong enough to carry the weight of raising 3 girls alone. But I believe this. If you choose to stay, you will become the father they need. Not by blood, but because your heart is warm enough to embrace their wounds. Lucas froze. Silent tears slid down his cheeks. All the doubts and guilt he had carried for so long seemed to soften, soothed by the voice of the woman he had loved more than life itself. That evening he gathered the girls in the workroom. Before them sat the journal, Jennifer's words in 3 sealed letters, each written for one of them. This is a gift your mother prepared long ago, he said gently. She never truly left. She's always been watching over you, in her own way. As the girls clutched the journal close, their faces bright with emotion and damp with tears, Lucas understood something deeply. Family isn't only made in the present. It's woven from memories, lovingly preserved, quiet, but fiercely enduring. That autumn, as Alena's dream entered its busiest season, Lucas received a sudden call from the school. The teacher's voice was urgent. Lena collapsed in class. We're taking her to the hospital. The world seemed to stop spinning. Lucas abandoned a meeting with investors and raced to the hospital, his mind spiraling with the worst possibilities. When he arrived, Lena was lying still in a hospital bed, her face pale, eyes closed. The doctor explained, exhaustion, mild burnout, caused by prolonged stress and lack of sleep. She's been staying up late studying for the academic competition, Janine whispered, but she didn't tell anyone. She was afraid that if she failed, Mom would be disappointed. Lucas sat beside the bed, gently holding his daughter's hand. His chest tightened with guilt. He had been so caught up in expansion plans and contracts, he hadn't noticed that a 12-year-old girl was silently pushing herself to become the pride her mother once dreamed of. When Lena finally opened her eyes, they met his with a faint flicker of fear. I'm sorry, she said weakly. I didn't want to make everyone worry. Lucas shook his head, placing a hand on her tangled hair. Lena, you don't have to push yourself just to make someone proud. I'm already proud of you, just for being you. That night, he canceled every meeting for the week. In the small kitchen behind the store, he made Jennifer's old soup recipe. The 3 girls sat around the table, and Lucas told stories, not about business, not about accomplishments, but about the times Jennifer stumbled and still found a way to rise again. Not perfect, just real. Under the soft golden light, Lucas understood something profound. Being a father isn't about building a grand future for your children. It's about standing beside them in their weakest moments and holding their hands even in silence as they find their strength again. One quiet Saturday afternoon, Lucas was painting with the girls in the small toy workshop behind the store when his phone rang. On the other end was Monica, her voice pulled tight like a strained string. He called me, Dad. He wants to take the girls to Mexico, to visit their roots. Lucas froze. Adrian, the man who had once abandoned Monica and Roger, now suddenly wanted to be closer to the girls. His reason? To connect by blood, to help them know where they come from. But to Lucas, this wasn't just a trip. It was a wound still healing. For Monica, for the girls, and for himself. He says he wants to make amends, Monica sighed. But Lucas, is making amends just another way to drag the kids into a mess that isn't theirs? Lucas spent the night in heavy thought. For the first time since becoming their legal father, he felt afraid, not of losing them, but of them being pulled into pain they were too young to fully understand. The next morning, he arranged a small picnic in a nearby park. After the meal, while the girls flew kites on the grassy hill, he sat next to Monica on the bench. "I won't stop it," Lucas said gently, "but I need to be sure. If they meet him again, it should be to close a chapter, not carry a burden that never belonged to them." Monica nodded, her eyes glistening. "I'm not sure I'm ready either, but maybe they are. They were raised in love, not in the shadows like we were." A week later, their little family, Lucas, the girls, Monica, and Constanza, traveled to the southern border, the place where everything had begun. Standing before the old wooden gate of Adrian's modest home, Lucas could feel the heartbeat of the three young girls pulsing beside him, not from fear, but anticipation. And so, like an invisible pillar of strength, he took each of their hands and led them forward, not to reclaim what had been lost, but to declare that it would never be repeated. After their trip to Mexico, Lena, the eldest, always quiet and wise beyond her years, began keeping a journal. Lucas discovered it one day while organizing books, noticing a small blue notebook tucked between the pages. He didn't read it, of course, but on the cover, written neatly in fountain pen, was a single line: "The diary of someone who will fly far." That evening, while the younger girls were watching cartoons, Lucas invited Lena out to the balcony to look at the moon. The wind was gentle, the air soft and calm. "I saw your journal," he said, trying to keep his tone light. "That title sounds full of dreams." Lena smiled softly. "I want to study abroad someday, study design, or maybe become a toy engineer." Like Mom, Lucas froze. He should have felt proud, but instead something sharp tugged at his chest. A fear of losing her again, not through mistake this time, but because she was growing up, taking flight on the very wings he had helped her nurture. "Everyone thinks I'm the strong one," Lena continued, "but I'm scared too. Scared that if I go too far, everyone might forget me." Lucas scooted his chair closer, his gaze as warm and steady as the moon above. "Lena," he said gently, "people only forget things that don't live in their hearts, and you've been carved deep into mine for a very long time." A few days later, Lena placed something on her father's work desk, a sketch, her first 3D puzzle toy model, inspired by family memories. "I want to sell it in the store," she said. "If people like it, then maybe I'll dare to dream even bigger." Lucas embraced her, and for the first time, he didn't feel afraid, because he finally understood. Being a father doesn't mean holding your children back. It means being strong enough to let them fly and giving them a place they'll always know how to come home to. If Lena was the bird with wings longing to fly far, then Issa, the youngest, was a little flame, flickering, unpredictable, and full of surprises. When the girls turned 13, Lucas began to notice a sharp change in Issa. Once a child who cradled dolls and whispered stories to them, she had grown moody, short-tempered, and often slammed her door shut after every conversation. One afternoon, while clearing the dinner table, Lucas found a note tucked beneath a plate. "I don't want to be controlled. I'm not a copy of Lena or Johnny. I am me." The word M-E was written in bold capital letters. Lucas went still. He had grown so used to Lena's gentleness and Johnny's easygoing nature that perhaps without realizing it, he had expected Issa to follow the same pattern. But Issa was a crosswind, ungraspable, unpredictable, and now she was declaring that. That evening, instead of knocking on her door like always, Lucas left a small wooden box outside her room. Inside was a blank notebook and a single note. "Write what you want to say if you're not ready to speak it yet. I'll listen. Your way." The next morning, the box was outside his own door. Inside, on the first page, written in deep purple ink, were the words, "I hate being compared. I want to draw, but not in Mom's style. I have my own." Lucas smiled, not because everything was fixed, but because a conversation had begun. From that day forward, Lucas and Issa shared what they called their silent talks, handwritten letters left on the dining table or slipped into lunchboxes. Through those words, Issa slowly opened up about her dream to become a comic artist, about feeling small between two shining sisters, and about the nameless anger that came with growing up. Lucas stopped trying to fix Issa. Instead, he learned to walk beside her, not leading, not correcting, just being present. Because true love isn't about reshaping a child to fit a mold. It's about giving them space to shape themselves. Among the three sisters, Yanni was always the one who drew the least attention, not because she was less remarkable, but because she often gave the spotlight away. Lena soared with big dreams. Issa burned bright with fierce personality. And Yanni was the bridge, the peacemaker, the quiet presence. One late night, while Lucas was tidying up their study corner, he came across an unfinished drawing. It showed three figures, a girl standing between two shadows, one radiant, one fiery. But the central figure was barely visible, so pale it was almost transparent. Lucas stood still, the breath catching in his chest. The next morning he invited Johnny to a small cafe near her school, the same one they always visited on her birthday. But this time, there was no cake. Only his gentle gaze and a soft question. Have you ever felt forgotten? Johnny looked up, eyes wide, then dropped her gaze. For the first time, Lucas saw tears silently falling from her eyes. I don't want to cause trouble, she whispered. I don't want you to be more tired. So I just try to be the one who makes peace. But sometimes, it's really exhausting. Lucas gently squeezed her hand, his heart tightening. He realized, Janie didn't lash out like Issa. She didn't aim for the stars like Lena. But she too carried her own kind of loneliness, quiet, invisible, and deep. From that day on, Lucas created what he called Johnny's Day. One afternoon a week, just for the two of them. No plans, no siblings, just them. They could do whatever Johnny wanted. Walk in the park, paint, read together, or simply do nothing. Not long after, Johnny submitted her first toy design, a board game called Quiet and Listen. Theme, understanding others doesn't need noise, just patience. And once again, Lucas understood. Every child is its own universe. And being a father isn't about finding the brightest light. It's about seeing the quiet stars that shine just as truly in silence. One late afternoon near year's end, just after Alena's dream had welcomed its last little customer of the day, Lucas received a call from a European partner. We want to bring your brand to Paris, the first store on Rue des Enfants, the famous street dedicated to children. Great news, right? But Lucas felt a heaviness settle in his chest. He had once dreamed of a store where every child could discover a little magic. But now, as that dream prepared to stretch across the globe, he feared it might lose what made it most special. Its soul, its family. That evening, he called a rare family meeting, something he only did when it was big. The three girls sat around the dinner table, eyes wide with curiosity. Someone wants to bring our store to Paris, Lucas began. But if I say yes, I'll have to be away often. Several months a year, maybe. I might miss birthday or holidays. The room went quiet. Do you want to go? Lena asked gently. Lucas paused. I don't know. I want to continue your mother's dream. But I'm afraid that if I fly too far, I won't be the man you still see every morning. Johnny was the first to speak. I think Mom would want her love to reach even farther. Issa chimed in, a little sheepishly. As long as you're still home in time for Sunday dinners. All three girls burst into laughter. Lucas joined them, not out of relief, but because he finally understood. He no longer had to choose between the dream and the family. They had become one and the same. In the end, he agreed, but with one condition. Every new store would have a special corner, the memory nook, a space to showcase children's drawings, handmade toys, and stories sent from families everywhere. Because Alena's dream had never just been a store. It was a home, lovingly expanded, through memory, love, and the small hands that were once left behind, and had now finally found one another. Time passed like the seasons inside the toy store. ever-changing, yet always painted in familiar colors. Now Lena, Johnny, and Issa were 17, no longer the little girls who once clung to Lucas's side, but three young women with dreams, personalities, and paths uniquely their own. Alena's dream had entered its 10th year since being reborn, and for the first time, Lucas wasn't the one organizing the anniversary celebration. His daughters were. "Dad, just take a step back," Lena said with a grin. "You're only allowed to sit in the front row and not cry too much." Lucas laughed, but inside emotion welled up. He had once carried all three girls in his arms, guided them step by step through the ruins of old memories, taught each how to stand tall, and now they were teaching him how to step back and let them shine. On the anniversary day, the store transformed into something out of a fairy tale. A small exhibition displayed Lena's debut designs, Johnny's thought-provoking board game, Quiet and Listen, and Issa's whimsical comic corner, titled Our Chaotic Family. Every piece bore the spirit of the store, the family, and their miraculous journey of rebirth. At the end of the day, the three girls stepped onto a small stage before a room packed with guests. "We were once three little girls left behind at a border," Lena said calmly. "But since Alena's dream came into our lives, we've never felt abandoned again," Johnny continued. "Because we have a father," Issa added with a sparkling smile. "Someone who once lost his way, but chose to come back and stay." The room erupted in applause. Lucas dabbed at the corner of his eye. He no longer felt like a man trying to atone or a guardian carrying guilt. Now he was a father, plain and whole. As the girls leapt down and wrapped their arms around him, Lucas understood something with absolute clarity. Every journey has its end, but love, if true and patient, will always find its way to begin again.